He asked the question, he listens to us on Spotify, which is fantastic, but how would you guys insulate a crawl space under a room with dirt floors? And when you and I both read that, your eyes lit up, and I'm like, "All right, this is Larson's
What did
jam."
I
Like,
say? Layup.
correct. You can't miss this one.
Because
So,
this is home science that was done really, really, really wrong for
a lot of years.
a long time. I grew up in a house with a crawl space.
Right.
It was a miserable part of our house. It was so cold.
Right.
It was like going, I mean, it was 10 degrees colder all the time. Freezing floors.
So let's talk about the I'm gonna let you explain how we're gonna fix it, but let's talk about what's wrong with it and why we know that's wrong with it, because it's something that's super easy to comprehend.
Well, how about we talk about how it's been done for 100 years?
Correct. That's what I mean. Is
Okay.
what's wrong with the way it's
All right.
always been done?
So for 100 years, and there's not as many crawl spaces in our area as there are in other parts of the country, typically because we have basements.
Right.
But crawl spaces come around a lot when
Additions.
that people don't want to put full basements underneath. And or in my house, it was actually a front porch area. The house I grew up was probably built in the 19 teens. It had a front porch.
Yep.
And then at some point, somebody turned that front porch into more living space. Yep. So all it had was footings, crawl space, dirt floor. So what they always wanted to do, what they thought you needed to do was you vented it.
Right.
So airflow could go through there, right?
Which was great in Wisconsin for about 3 months of the year.
Yes. Got rid of the moisture,
Yep.
cut down on mold and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then what people did was they just stapled some insulation to the floor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And expected that
Correct.
to keep it,
To isolate them from the cold.
to isolate.
Because in the wintertime, if it's 0 out, like we're going to have tomorrow again, if you have 0-degree air that you're purposely putting under your house, well, then that's underneath your feet. And that's like taking a vest that I'm wearing and say, I'm going to hang it on the pole outside, not connected to me, and hope it works.
Mhm.
Because once they staple it to the underside of the floor, gravity pulls it down, so now it separates. So
What do
now
we know about what does insulation have to be to work?
connected to the side you want to be on.
It has to be touching.
Correct.
So once that insulation is stapled up there, it starts to fall down. Now there's an air gap
Of 0-degree air.
of nothing.
Right.
Right. So it was freezing cold. Jason wants to know how.
Right. So let's go back there. So here's why we know that this is a problem. And we do this on almost every crawl space point we go on.
Mhm.
The guys will go downstairs and they'll actually take some scented oil.
Oh yeah.
And they put a couple drops of scented oil in the because
On the floor.
everything's that crawl space that's below the house that doesn't affect me in the house. Well, they don't understand it, so you put that scented oil down there, and they'll go back upstairs and they'll say to Mrs. Jones, "Hey, you smell that lavender? Yeah, I don't know where's it coming from. Let me ask you, Mrs. Jones, would you ever go on purpose go down that crawl space? Oh my God, no, it's nasty. There's spiders, there's mice,
and it is. I've been in the one I grew up in. It's nasty.
It's nasty. I would never go down there. Well, can you believe that you're actually breathing the air that's down there? She goes, and then also the light bulb goes on. Yeah, I put those essential oil drops down there, and what you're smelling is all that essential oil that's in your crawl space is coming up through your house through stack effect, right? And now you're breathing all that dirty air that you would never go down into. So when you do that to people and they understand that is part of what they live in, it kind of freaks them out.
Yep.
And
It's
it
dirty.
It should.
It's damp. A lot of times there's mold in there.
Correct. Yeah, mice, nasty
mushrooms,
Yeah.
weird stuff, and that air is coming in through those vents, and because of stack effect,
Yep.
going
Coming through
right
the
up
floor.
into the house.
Correct.
So not only is it freezing cold,
Yep.
or hot,
It's terrible air quality.
You're breathing that air in.
Right. So when we put that essential oils down there, it's kind of like, okay, now we grab the customer by the shoulder and say, okay, now you understand there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Let us show you how to fix it. And so when you saw this, your eyes lit up, and I'm gonna let you do it because that's your jam.
Mm.
But when we change this part of the house, it changes their world for sure.
When I read this question, I looked at Shane and Chase. I was like, "Did you guys make this up?"
Right.
But real question.
Real question, and it's a real answer.
But a lot of people actually don't really know how to fix them these days. So what do we really need to do? Really, we need to take the thermal barrier
Mhm.
and
the air barrier.
and the air barrier, and we actually encapsulate the closed space.
Right.
So now there's no more venting.
Nope.
There's no need for insulation on the floor.
Nope.
Because we're not letting that cold air get in there anymore at all.
Correct. We'll isolate the dirt floor because we got to stop all the dirty, nasty air from the floor
Yes.
coming down. So we put what's called a product called clean space down.
Mhm.
It's a really thick white plastic. It's beautiful. Like you could have a party in there when this is done, right?
It
Looks
does
beautiful.
look really awesome. We'll put some pictures on.
Put some pictures on how
with
this
so
looks.
you can see a before and after with clean space.
Right. So we'll isolate the floor and the dirty air and all the moisture from the dirt from coming up now. So we stop that.
Yep. And we run that right up the sides.
Yep. And a lot of times we'll foam
Once it gets up, yep, and then we spray because there's rims down there.
rims down there.
So we're going to spray foam those rims, and we're going to spray foam that clean space right to the rims. So now it's completely encapsulated.
So now you got to think of now the hardest part for people to think about is now your crawl space is now part of your house, which is okay. Get rid of all that that insulation that's up there, that nasty stuff that's not doing you any good. So now if we make that crawl space, let's say 55 degrees, 60 degrees, and your house is trying to be 70,
It's still not going to be warm.
but it's better
It's
than
going to be
zero.
more like a basement.
It's like 0 under your feet. Or it's not 0 under your feet now. It's 55 or 60.
Correct.
And now we have a clean air, a protected spot that you're not bringing all the bad elements into, and it makes people's houses way, way, way warmer.
Mm-hmm. Now, back in the day, when what we've learned, what we know, being I would call us somewhat home performance experts in the way a home works and breathes, and
In the retro market,
in the retro market,
right?
Yeah, not new construction.
New construction, not our jam.
We don't do new construction. What we know is that one thing can either negatively or positively affect another area.
Correct.
So when we first started doing this, a number of years ago, we were new at this, and we had this exact same question, and we went and ran an estimate for someone not that far from here, and they had an addition, and it had a crawl space, and it was freezing cold, obvious reason. So what do we need to do? We need to clean space, their crawl space. We need to encapsulate it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we didn't do, so this was an old home. So the attic was done very, very poorly. I think they had like literally 3 inches of almost nothing insulation in the
Correct.
attic. Now, what do we know? If a home is leaky and there's a lot of stack effect going on, it's going to pull air from somewhere.
It's losing air through the top,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Gotta come in.
It's going to suck air through somewhere in the bottom.
So what it was doing was it was sucking a lot of air in through that crawl space, which was super leaky. Well, now we closed the crawl space off. And they called not long after and said that we actually made that addition colder.
Sure.
Why?
Because now it's pulling all the air in from all the leaks around the windows and the doors.
Pulling it in from the windows.
Correct.
So now instead of it pulling from underneath, it started pulling from the conditioned space, actually making it feel colder
Draftier.
and way draftier.
Yep.
Because before they just had freezing cold floors.
Right.
Now they feel a physical draft coming from the windows.
Right.
Why? Because that house is losing so much heat and air through their
Attic.
Now, what we needed to do was say, okay, yes, this does need to be done, but we really need to take a good hard look at your attic.
Correct.
And we need to air seal your attic properly, because if we cut off the airflow from here, it's going to make another area in your home even leakier and feel worse, because your home's going to pull air from some place.
Yep. And I think that hits on the big part that a lot of people don't understand. And a lot of contractors don't understand that everything you do to a house is going to change it, right?
Mhm.
Every action has equal opposite reaction.
Mhm.
Same thing happens in home comfort and home performance, especially in retro homes. And in trying to tackle your windows and doors you're never going to win that battle. But I know that if I stop the pull of air leaking out the attic, and I stop the air coming from the bottom, I can make a much more healthier and comfortable house. And crawl spaces are notoriously bad, and leaky attics are bad
Terrible.
too. Yep.
Just because of the way that they were done and just not understanding the science.
Science.
So for this customer, it really was our fault.
Sure.
So
The first time, yep.
the first time,
Mhm.
we did go back and do some air sealing for this person pro bono.
Yep.
And they paid for some more insulation.
Yep.
And it changed
They
everything.
loved it.
It changed everything.
Yep.
So that brings up another topic that where we've went out to homes and they just wanted their rim joists in their basement spray foam.
Mhm.
But because of this situation, I've educated our reps and
Right.
let them know, like, look, you can't just, if they just want their rim joists spray foam, that's fine. That's something we can do. But you have to go look in the attic. If there's no air sealing done in the attic,
It's going to make it
you
worse.
spray foam those rim joists is going to make their conditioned space in their home it's going to make it drafty.
Correct.
It's going to suck air in from the windows, from around the door, more so than it
That
ever
pressure
was
plane
before.
is moving up And now my negative pressure just moves up into the first floor versus being in the rim joist in the basement.
Got to pull air from somewhere.
Uh-huh.
So knowing that, I mean, that's a game changer. There are a lot of contractors that probably have no idea, right? You want your rim joist sprayed? Yeah, no problem. You want sure, we can encapsulate the
Crawl space.
the crawl space.
Yeah.
No big deal. But we've learned.
Yeah, and correct. And I think that's the key between what we do and how I sleep really good at night. I know you do too. That if we're going to work on home, especially when it comes to insulation, that we're going to take the right approach, and the only way we'll do it is right. And I know there's been jobs that
We've made mistakes.
we made mistakes, but we also know that we got to protect the customers because they don't know, and a lot of other contractors don't necessarily know either. It's different than roofing, it's different than gutters, it's different than siding,
Way different.
way different. There's a lot of things that you can't see playing in the house, right? And I know that when we do a job, if we're either going to do it right or we're not going to do it at all. Like there's been times that if they go up in the attic, just like you said, and the attic is a cheese hole, a Swiss cheese, right? And they want the rim joist done, we're going to make it worse.
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense.
We're going to make their home more uncomfortable.
And now they're going to spend a couple $1,000s and they're going to be unhappy and uncomfortable. Nobody wins. So I would rather say, hey, if you want us to do it the right way, we can do it the right way, same as you will, but we got to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And
You might not like the price.
but unfortunately,
We'd rather not do it at all.
I'd rather not do it at all.
Yeah.
Because that's not worth it.
It is not worth it.